Welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. Brought to you by Elite Consulting Partners, it's the only podcast offering unfiltered guidance and direct advice for all things concerning financial advisors, RIAs, and the practitioners in the wealth management business. Learn more and subscribe today at eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcast. And now, here's your host, Frank LaRosa.
Hey everybody, welcome to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. I am your host, Frank LaRosa. I am joined by my co-host, Stacey Frank. How you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be back as always.
Yep.
How are you?
Good. We are going to get into it right away. No fancy lead up, no. Blah, blah, blah.
Get to it.
Whatever. We're going to get to it. This is sort of like a hot mic conversation, but not really. So today I wanted to talk about I've had a couple of conversations or a couple of podcasts about this whole Commonwealth thing with LPL, and we're not going to be talking about that specifically today, but I do want to talk about what that represents, and that is a continued consolidation of large broker dealers, medium sized to large. I don't know if you want to classify Commonwealth, but just the consolidation of the broker dealer space. And what does that mean to financial advisors that are looking for the right home in terms of choice, right? Because as you consolidate, you now have less choice. And so what does that mean in terms of how do firms continue to deliver on a high-touch service? So one of the questions we'll talk about here is, does the OSJ model or the producer group model or the ensemble service model, does that become more important than ever before, right? Where, I always have this saying, like, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? And I think what will end up happening, my opinion, is as there's more consolidation, I do think that the OSJ model or producer model, whatever you want to call it, because it's different at different firms, that's going to become a more important thing. Even though some of the firms that are out there, and I'm not going to use the names of their different firms, some of the firms out there, in a way, are viewing OSJs at their firms as almost like competitors, right? Because the advisor has a choice to go, do you want to join the firm direct, so a direct affiliation, or do you want to join underneath an OSJ? And obviously the economics are different for the firm, because if they join direct, and let's just simple math, they get a 92% payout or 90% payout if they join direct. So the firm is making 10 points. If they join underneath an OSJ and the firm is paying the OSJ 96%, right? And then the OSJ is giving the advisor 90%. So the advisor is still getting 90. The difference is the firm is only making 4 points versus 10 points. It's not as profitable.
There's less margin. Look, I'm coming from the angle of I'm a huge fan of the OSJ model because it provides.
Well, I think we both are. I'm not saying I'm not. But
no,
I think
we are.
Right.
We are. For the right OSJs,
yes,
we are.
Yes,
But it
right
provides
ones.
the advisor to be in a large universe made to feel smaller.
Correct.
With more commonalities, with rubbing elbows with other like-minded advisors, coaching, extra resources.
Just a community.
A community of advisors, right. But that's not for everybody. And I don't think it's fair for us to assume that because an advisor wants better support from their firm that may be growing too large for them to be recognized, right, that we should always assume that the OSJ model and being part of a community is what they want. What they really want is the service that they were promised, the more advisor-centric culture that they were accustomed to. But some advisors may not want to be part of that. So unfortunately, staying at some of the larger firms, those that don't want that might feel stuck.
Yeah.
And so which avenue do we take them where they can feel supported, have access to the resources, strong capital, not another firm that's going to be acquired? What do we do with those advisors?
Yeah, look, I had a conversation yesterday with an advisor, and one of their asks was, I don't want to go to a firm that's a target, like these weren't Commonwealth advisors, obviously, but they were like, hey, listen, I'm all for going to a smaller broker dealer for the service and all that other stuff that you're talking about, but I don't want to end up at a major, being bought out a year later because the smaller firm can't handle what's going on, can't handle the price compression, technology expenses, and so it creates an issue, right? And I don't necessarily know where it's going to go, but I do think as on the larger firm side, you're going to have to find solutions to truly deliver, excuse me, on a higher level of service than you're currently offering. Because the fact of the matter is, if you have 10, 20, 30,000 advisors, right, and let's say half of them are directly affiliated, meaning that they go direct to home office supervision, whatever you want to call it, whatever the firms call it, you're going to have to really add staff to make sure that you're providing the level of service to those clients. And then it's a leadership thing. I think that in my perspective and what I see is that a lot of times I'll call it the top of the leaderboard, they have a vision, they have a mantra that they want to deliver, and they're right about it, right? They're spot on, they care about the advisor, all that good stuff, right? But there's a huge gap between what the senior leader wants and everybody else in the field, and all the operations people, and all the regional people, and all the whatever you want to call the titles. There's so many different titles nowadays. I get lost. But all of those people that have goals to achieve, and all these different metrics that they have to achieve, where I don't necessarily know if they believe in the message of the senior leadership, or not believe, if they operate with the same concern as senior leadership does, as it relates to advisor experience, all of those things, right? I see a gap in this across. I'm just going to say all of the firms, not any one firm, all of the firms. Because you lose it. There's a disconnect.
There is a disconnect, and it's funny, and I don't want to go down the path of the RIA world. However, seemingly in our industry, because we speak to advisors all the time that feel like the RIA space is the wild, wild west, that they have to reinvent the wheel, that they have to build out compliance, so on and so forth. And maybe that was the case years ago, and curious your thoughts on it too. But what we're seeing today, and I like to call it the village of people, the village of people that many of these large RIAs, and they are not small stakes, multi-billion, $20 billion, $30 billion conglomerate RIAs that are replicating what some of the traditional IBDs used to be. And they're building that out in the RIA space where seemingly there's more flexibility, more choice, on top of having the resources for recruiting, marketing, practice management, coaching, whatever else, access to senior leadership. So I feel like, tell me if you agree or disagree, that we're seeing an evolution of what used to be, I'll never go RIA, but that space is meeting us halfway to what the traditional IBD used to be.
Yeah, because
what's your thought on that?
Yeah, because they're also providing the opportunity to have a friendly broker-dealer relationship, so they're not, as an advisor, you're not being asked to give up your broker-dealer business if you have some, if you have 15, 20% of your business, right? And I guess this whole question is really about the more things change, the more they stay the same, and that is new players constantly come into the marketplace. So as the industry consolidates, as a broker-dealer space consolidates, the RIA space, there's 15,000 or so RIAs, right? That business is going to expand. So there's consolidation and an expansion, and the RIA world, as it's developing and modifying and
building resources in-house.
They're building resources in-house. They're building more firms are becoming open to having a friendly broker-dealer relationship. And so I think that in a way, it's like the wirehouse firms did what they were doing and acted and functioned the way they acted and are pushing advisors to the independent space. I think that the independent broker-dealers are doing the same thing, and they're pushing their independent advisors over to the RIA space for a lot of the same reasons.
Yeah.
They're losing the connectivity to the senior leadership folks. And so I think that's really happening. And then the other component that I think these large broker-dealers independent broker-dealers need to understand, regardless of what you think about OSJs and how whether you view them as your competition internally, the fact is that they have the ability to offer a higher level of service, higher touch, than you probably can if that advisor is being affiliated with you directly, and there's 10,000 advisors. I was just on the phone with somebody recently, but not when I say recently, like right before this call, so really recently.
Okay.
And he was a business development director at one of the firms, and doesn't matter which firm. And his comment was like, all of the major firms, and it's whether it's LPL, Osaic, Advisor, Cetera, Cambridge, the bigger independent broker dealers, right? For the most part, they're all the same. This was the conversation we were having, right? And he was speaking about this from an insider's point of view, right? He now works as a biz dev guy for an OSJ. What he was saying was that they're all more or less the same, right? With some small nuances here and there, but 80% of what they offer is the same at every firm. So what differentiates you? It's client engagement. And I say client engagement, the advisor engagement, right? Connection to leadership. Mm-hmm. All of those things, the cultural things that firms have to learn, that's going to be the separator for advisors moving forward. And you're going to keep consolidating, and the major firms are out there, and we all know who they are, right? Are going to continue to buy these mid-tier firms, and there's a couple that I think are going to be on the chopping block soon. So we're probably going to have this conversation again in 6 to 9 months. I think you're just pushing your advisors out the door, and you're pushing them to the to the RIA space.
And I think too that where maybe the OSJ model may be a threat to margin for certain firms, it actually could be the ticket to retention.
Retention. Oh, yeah.
The ticket to retention for keeping the advisors in-house, whether they stay direct or whether they join a group under the same umbrella, they're going to feel connected to that community or the resources that they're providing because they're feeling like they're not getting it as the firms are growing.
Yeah.
So to me, that could be the ultimate retention strategy,
Yeah.
but now it seems like it's a competing force in some
Right.
respects.
So I think that, right, and that's sort of where I was going with this too,
Right.
is that if you are one of those firms, you're listening or you're thinking about going to one of those firms, you need to really embrace the OSJ producer group, ensemble group model, right? Enterprise model, which is what I don't see right now. Not all the firms. Some of the firms I do see this, but there are some firms I don't see this happening. But as firms start to consolidate, I don't think you're going to have a choice but to embrace that model to retain those advisors, right? And advisors is affiliated directly with you, and they're doing several $1 million. They're really not getting the service that they used to get because you have twice as many advisors or 3 times as many advisors. They got a choice. They can either continue to not get the level of service, they can move, and which I don't think they're going to do. They can move, they'll leave the firm, or they can find a solution within your firm that delivers what they used to get when your firm was only 5,000 advisors or whatever it was, right? I don't think you're going to have a choice. And I think that it's like one of those things, like be careful what you wish for when you talk about, wanting every advisor to be at your firm or just own the marketplace. I think be careful what you wish for because you're sort of creating this problem for yourself where you might think there isn't a solution, but there is a solution.
And remember, these advisors are business owners.
Yeah.
They went into business for themselves or private practice to be able to be in the driver's seat, to make those decisions and be supported in the right way to make those decisions. If that's taken away from the advisor, then they probably can't help but say, I'm a business owner. I want to be able to make the right decisions for my clients and the growth of my practice, but I'm being told otherwise and where I need to go.
Yeah.
So we just have to be sensitive to that as an industry.
Like I left a 12,000 headcount wirehouse firm to go independent because I wanted to feel, closer to the money. I wanted to have more control, more autonomy, but also work with a firm that only had 5,000 or 6,000 advisors. Now the firm I work for has 20,000 advisors or whatever. There's multiple different options and all that. I'm starting to feel like this is very much like Morgan Stanley again or Merrill Lynch or whatever. I'm not picking on them, those firms either, but that's what's going to happen. There's a slippery slope here with wanting to be competitive and continue to use the capital that these broker-dealers have to go and acquire businesses. But I think they have to be very strategic about the ripple effects that has on the advisors that are at the firm, the OSJs that are at the firm, because at some point, and this is a whole nother topic, I guess, but at some point, when these OSJs see the kind of money that these broker-dealers are being bought for, right, and the payouts that they're being given when they come over that are probably higher than the payouts that the OSJ is getting at the current firm.
That fair?
Whoops. Yeah, that's going to open up another can of worms.
I think the biggest thing, and for us where we sit, is about education. Making sure that the financial advisor, who is our client, is well educated as to whether they should stay the course, path of least resistance, or take control over their destiny and where they want their firm to go and make an educated decision. And we're here to provide information that they may or may not know. We know that many advisors are unsure or what's that RIA space or that hybrid space, but we just want them to be empowered. We want you, the advisor, to be empowered again to make that decision that's best for your business and your clients. Whatever that may be. It could be the path of least resistance.
Right, whatever that may be, right? Some people want to they want to go to that large firm for all the different reasons. I would say there's a reason why there's always a line at Costco, right? Because some people want that. A lot of people want that.
Wholesale option.
Wholesale option.
Low-cost option.
And you want to be left alone, and you don't want to talk to the senior leadership because whatever.
Yeah.
And you just want, you want high payouts, low costs, be left alone. Okay. That's fine. A lot of the firms out there have that solution for you. I just look at it like, I guess because I tend to be more the premium guy. I'd rather pay a little bit more to get more service and all the other stuff. So for me,
you pay for sometimes.
It's all different. Our job is to give you our opinion based on what we feel after conversations with advisors, what we think that you are looking for, and then deliver on those things. And so, people don't come listen to this podcast for us to read off a script and, just not give opinions. They come here because it's advisor talk. We're talking about the business. We're talking about the things that we think people should be talking about right now.
Yeah, and these are things that other advisors have expressed to us about their concerns or, I don't have enough knowledge about XYZ.
We actually talk about this stuff all the time. Like, again, my conversation with this other guy was like a half hour ago. So these are fresh off the plate here. So look, if you want to talk more about this or you have some questions, you have concerns, if you're an owner of a broker-dealer, an independent broker-dealer, and you want to debate this with me on camera, you know where to find us.
Let's do it.
I'd love to have that conversation. We have our conference coming up soon. And
biggest one yet.
Yeah. So we have our conference coming up, and we're going to have a conversation about PE and we have a great panel there. And so the panel, we're going to talk about and debate the value of PE. So on the panel, we have some firms that have PE funding, and we have some firms that don't have PE funding. And
by choice.
By choice.
Right.
And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that conversation goes. And I told them I want to get a little bit scrappy, so I want to be able to see that. We're going to go live next week on that one. I think we're doing that one on Wednesday, the 16th.
16th.
Yeah, the 16th. So we're going to go live. So make sure you check that out. And again, listen, it's our job to give you guys the straight. I call balls and strikes, right? And this is what I'm calling right now. This is what I see going on in the industry right now. With this consolidation, I think there's more to come. But I think over time, I've been doing this for 30 years. And what I've found is the more things change, the more they stay the same. It just looks a little differently.
Yep. Just be educated. Know enough to make the right decision. And
know what you really want.
And know what you want.
Be honest with yourself about what you really want. Not what you think you should be saying or what you think you should want. What do you really want? and we'll help you find that solution.
Right.
So
there you go.
Anyway,
thanks for listening.
That's a hot mic moment right there. So less than 20 minutes. There you go. We'll catch you on the other side. Thanks for listening. If you want to reach out to us, you can always call Stacey. I'm at
856-816-6322 or Stacey@EliteConsultingPartners.com. Don't forget the E, or
856-316-4651. And you can DM me on my Instagram account, which is franklarosa.elite. You can always DM me on LinkedIn, which you can just look me up at Frank LaRosa, or shoot me an email at frank@eliteconsultingpartners.com, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Advisor Talk with Frank LaRosa. If you're looking for more advice or solutions on any topics in the financial services industry, or you just want to subscribe to our podcast, head on over to eliteconsultingpartners.com/podcasts.